update once I know. I'm going to give this a moment to build an audience. Damn, I need a soda. So I'm going to talk while I'm going to the fridge and getting a soda. So now you all know I have a fridge in my office that is stocked with Mountain Dew. Okay. I'm giving this a few minutes because when I just go live suddenly, people don't know. But I'm going to start in a minute. It's the middle of the day. I realize not very many people can watch videos at this time and that you'll comment later. So the JC decision came out and it was a tie. A tie is a loss, but it's the best kind of loss. But I'm not trying to put a happy face on things. That's a bad decision. But I understand bad decisions. Like I've said all along, the JC decision in my case was a bad decision. And like I told the LNC, the JC decision is the JC decision. Not all of us are going to like all of them. I liked the Delaware one. They didn't. I don't like this one. I'm sure they will. That's the way it goes. We are less or just about 3 weeks from Reno. That's where all of these issues will end up getting resolved. I firmly believe that the membership is grossed out by what happened in Massachusetts. And I don't think, though the opinions haven't come out, only the ruling has, I don't think that the no votes were because they think the purgers were right. I think they honestly believe that the LNC doesn't have the bylaws authority to do this. I think they're wrong. But remember, this is what that appeal was about. It was not about whether or not the purgers were right. And I want you to keep that in mind. Now, I still think it's a bad decision, but I just want everyone to be clear on what the decision was. It was a bylaws question, a national bylaws question. Hey, Chuck, it wasn't a question about whether or not the purgers were right. So it's one of those win some, you lose some. Just like I said all along, I'd be very interested in reading the opinions. But one thing I'm going to tell you I'm not going to do. I'm sure I'm going to disagree mightily with the 3 no's. I'm not going to, I'll answer your question in a second, but I'll go. I'm not going to be personally saying anything about the 3 people who disagreed. I don't think they're bad people. One of them is in the room right now. We just disagree. So I may criticize their opinion, but if anyone's expecting me to criticize their persons or their integrity, I am not, because I know these people. I would love to hear the reasoning, and I will probably criticize the reasoning, but maybe not. I think I am going to concentrate on the 3 votes I believe got it right and pull out the money quotes, because I know Alicia Matson's going to bring the money quotes. I know Mary Ruart is going to bring the money quotes. And forgive me, I just looked at this. I'm actually forgetting. I know Alicia and Mary were in the affirmative, and so was Arnold. Tom Arnold, I'm proud of you. So I have no idea. I haven't seen enough of Tom Arnold's writing to know if he's going to have the incisive wit that Ruart and Matson always do, whether I agree with them or not. I'm very surprised at Robinson's vote, but D. Frank's a good friend of mine. I'm not going to impugn anybody's integrity whatsoever. Just not gonna. So I'm probably just going to talk about the affirmative votes. This is going to be settled in Reno. And in Reno, the purgers, if I were them, I wouldn't come. Not because I think anything like non-libertarian would happen, like anyone's going to get hurt or anything like that. I do think they're going to be shamed And that's a perfectly libertarian response, because what they did was disgustingly shameful. And I would be very surprised if any of the 3 no votes would disagree with me on that. Now that the JC decision is over, I actually think you 3 can say your opinions. Maybe you can't. I can't tell you your ethics. So that's entirely up to you guys. But I cannot believe that any of the 3 no votes thought the purgers were right. This was just a cold, hard bylaws decision, which I believe is wrong, and I believe will provoke a bylaws amendment from the floor, which is both good and bad. Bylaws written 3 weeks before convention can suck because they haven't had enough vetting time. And in this, I'm slightly going to be critical of the 3 no votes. If we end up with a really shitty bylaw because of this, well, it was kind of your decision that was the catalyst. I'm not going to blame you for somebody's bad writing if somebody writes something bad. Oh, Chuck, I haven't read your entire report. I'm going to tell you something candidly that I've told you before. The fact that you guys allowed an operative from another political party to remain your chair has poisoned your whole report. I've been talking to delegates. Y'all should have had the balls to remove him as your chair. Not because I don't like the guy. I actually like the guy. I don't like his political opinions, but he started a new political party. Someone who started a new political party should have nothing to do with the bylaws of our party. This isn't a like or not like thing. So I think you guys have a self-inflicted wound that has really prejudiced your report. I think the fact that Fishy Man is obviously pushing an anti-RONR agenda, which is a huge reason there is this mess in Massachusetts to begin with. The biggest argument against the Fishy Man amendment is what happened in Massachusetts. DRO sucks. It sucks for political parties. It's fine for smaller, friendlier groups. Not that political parties can't be friendly, but the nature of politics is contention. DRO absolutely sucks. And the one good thing that came out of this Massachusetts controversy is that the Fishy Man proposal is going to go up in flames. I think the alternative proposals are just solutions looking for problems, and I hope they fail too. And I will be arguing against them if they make it to the floor. But I've been open about this all along. I'm going to read your report. I'd be very interested in, one good thing, JJ, and DRO doesn't make up for the fact that as a whole, it sucks. I could point to things in RONR, I think, that suck. That doesn't ruin the whole thing. Like, I think it sucks that RONR doesn't require recusal in certain instances. But that one sucky thing doesn't make me say the whole thing sucks. And one good thing in DRO doesn't make DRO not suck. And if the party wants to allow votes of no confidence, they can put it in their bylaws. I'm actually not a fan of votes of no confidence, by the way, anyway. Just saying. So, yeah, the convention delegates will ultimately resolve this. There's no ass mattery towards the JC. I believe everyone did the best they thought they could. It's not the result I wanted. And I do think you guys, I'm not going to say, let's talk pragmatically. I obviously wanted you to vote your consciences, and would never say, put aside your conscience for pragmatics. But pragmatically, I think you just assured hours of credentials fighting. The LNC needed to make this decision. I guess nothing's going to change the fact that no matter what is said in the opposing opinions, I know enough about this issue that, oh, that's an interesting issue, JJ. We'll have to talk about that offline, and perhaps I can make that argument from the floor. I misunderstood you. My apologies. But unfortunately, I think an unfortunate repercussion of what the JC did is ensuring that potentially even the whole first day is going to be wasted. Now, I obviously wouldn't want you to change your vote based upon pragmatics, but I do think consequentially that's going to be what happened. And if the JC had found the right way in this one, credentialing would have taken maybe an hour. So I think you guys just guaranteed. No, it changes a lot, Ryan. It changes a lot. If the JC had found the right way, though a tie is not as bad. A tie isn't a decisive loss. A tie is a tie. I mean, it's still a loss, don't get me wrong. But if they had made the right decision, credentialing would have been over in an hour. Because it's not going to be over Massachusetts. Ryan, let me explain my opinion. Of course, I respect you highly, so we can disagree on this. It's going to start with Massachusetts, and that's going to take at least an hour. But the very few bad actors in the party, because I don't think most people who disagree are bad actors, and I also think most of the party doesn't give a shit about the faction wars. The bad actors are going to be emboldened to challenge other delegations that they wouldn't have been emboldened to do so but for this JC decision. Again, not a reason to vote one way or another. I'm just telling you the reality as I see it, and I could be wrong, of the consequences of the fallout of this. And it's going to embolden the LNC, who can do a lot of damage in 3 weeks. Each time I think they can't get worse, they say, hold my beer. But anyway, I promised you guys I would let you know one way or another. Now, there was a question about how does this affect credentials. It doesn't affect the decision the credentialing committee made at all. It really doesn't. The credentialing committee was examining the merits of the purge. The JC, this is why I keep trying to make clear to you guys, it's two separate issues. And even the LNC, well, one guy on the LNC is confused on this. 2 Massachusetts appeals were not combined. There wasn't even 2 appeals filed. There was one waiting in the wings, ready to be filed, but it wasn't filed. The JC decision was on the very limited issue of the LNC's authority. The credentialing committee's decision had to do with the merits of what happened in Massachusetts. 2 totally different issues. Does anyone have any questions on that? Because I have a feeling I'm going to have to be saying this over and over. The JC decision should have 0 impact on what credentials did. Now, if we had won this JC opinion, then it went to the LNC, who voted on the side of the purgers, as I believe they would have, and then a second appeal got filed and answered quickly and found in favor of the purgers. That would affect the credentials committee. Is everyone clear on the distinction here? I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but at least understand what I'm saying, though I do think on the issue that the current appeal and what the credentials committee considered are two different issues, I think that's completely indisputable. Like, I don't even think reasonable people can disagree there. I mean, it's on paper. The question before the JC had to do with the LNC. The question before the credentials had to do with who are the rightful delegates. Totally different questions. And no matter what decision either body made, there was going to be a challenge from the floor. It just changes who makes the challenge. And honestly, I think, because remember, the JC is the final word until convention. And you got to abide by it, just like I had to. And like I said, to the right people in Massachusetts, the ones who are on the right side of this issue, well, at least you only have to wait 3 weeks for justice. I had to wait 7. 3 weeks is going to be hard, though. The first month after my bad decision was fucking awful. So these next 3 weeks are going to be hard on you guys. But as I promised, and I'll make this promise publicly, I will never stop fighting for them. What they did was wrong and strikes at the heart of our party. And if our party can't stand against this, we've already died. It's kind of like what D. Frank Robinson said about the statement of principles. The reason it takes 7/8 to amend isn't that if it got gutted, that would mark the death of the party. It would be if you couldn't find 1/8 of delegates to stand for principles, the party died a long time ago. If we can't stand on the side of mass secret expulsions without notice, we've already died. People can even think that all 47 of them should have been expelled, but one by one with proper notice and due process, and still agree with me. You don't do secret expulsions without notice. That's Stalin-esque. That's gulag bullshit. So I believe the party is on our side on the issue of the purge. Now, whether or not the party is on our side as to whether or not the LNC had the authority to make this decision, I think that's a bit dicier. I do think the party is on our side on that. And I think the LNC should be censured from the floor for refusing to do this. Will that happen? Probably not. I'm not going to be making any such motions. I'm probably going to be making very few motions in Reno. I'm going to be too busy with my campaign. I'd vote for it, though. So I'm looking very forward to reading what Tom Arnold, Mary Rohr, and Alicia Matson had to say. And the convention delegates there's a process, which I'm very tired right now, and JJ can let us know, but there's a process to overrule any JC decision from the floor. And I hope this decision, whether or not a bylaws amendment goes through, gets overruled. I want my decision to be overruled, not for me. Let me reword that, because that's not entirely true. Not just for me, but for future people who will be targeted, just like Angela Keaton was targeted. And I'll tell you, Chuck, that is why I oppose that amendment you guys are doing to combine those two sections of the bylaws to remove the distinctions between officers and at large. unless I didn't read the thing very carefully, but unless you put in due process protections in there for the entire LNC, that amendment needs to die in a fire. And I will bring I will turn on my rocket pack the way you know I can. And I'm a flashpoint in this party for lack of due process. If I have to save all of my words for killing those two things, I will do so. Because if RO&R is gotten rid of, we can kiss member rights goodbye, which I believe is exactly what the fishy man wants. And if those two portions are combined, no future officer can make the argument that they're denied due process under Roberts. So unless an amendment is made from the floor, or if I didn't read that closely enough and due process is included in there, that is not going to pass. I haven't looked at that one yet, Chuck, so I am professing a lot of ignorance as to your report. And Chuck, you know me. You don't need to tell me to be prepared. You already know that I actually, except for malfeasance, don't believe the LNC should have the authority to remove anybody because it's a political game, like it was with me. Just because you can get 2/3 of a faction to gang up on a minority view that was elected on the first round with over 50% of the vote as the same exact person doing the same exact things that they got removed for, that is political crap. Only the delegates of the last convention, through some kind of recall petition, should be able to remove any LNC member for anything other than malfeasance. Obviously, for malfeasance, such as the classic case of the treasurer stealing money, the LNC has to act quickly. But if it's the boo-hoo, I don't like what so-and-so said on YouTube. No, only and that person had a YouTube channel at the time they were elected, like I did. No. Too bad, LNC. And the fact that there was a non-disclosed interest in the LLCC and two people who didn't disclose that interest, whether or not they say they're on the board now or not, they never disclosed they were previously on the board and voted to mortgage our building $85,000 to give to this corporation that has no transparency proceedings on how the money is spent. That is a removable conflict of interest. Having a YouTube channel is not. And one of those is a regional. So that person would have to be removed by their region, but the other one is an at-large. And I mostly agree with your statement, Chuck. I do think the thing needs to be more explicit in the bylaws, but I do care what direction the delegates take. Because what happened last year was disgusting. It was a political witch hunt. Nearly everyone knows it. Libertarian parties from all over the world wrote me. The U.S. Libertarian Party became the laughingstock of the world because of that. So I do care what direction the delegates take, because like it or not, we are considered the leaders of the worldwide political libertarian movement. And we failed them all. But okay, I don't want to talk about my appeal anymore. That's going to be settled in 3 weeks. This is about Massachusetts. I'd have been happier with a tie in mine. Let's put it that way. So it was a tie. We'll have to settle it in Reno. I'm more concerned as to what shitty stuff this is going to embolden the LNC to do. And my word to delegates is like in 2020 when the LNC decided it couldn't trust you and was going to unilaterally decide to allow remote participation when our bylaws do not allow it. And then we wasted a whole day coming to the same decision, but doing it the right way. I'm just asking you to remember that. Because at the end of the day, only about 15 people voted against the remote delegates. There was never a chance that the delegates were not going to do the right thing. They had to go home to these other people. This could have been over in an hour if the LNC didn't do what it did. And my bigger fear is that this is going to embolden the LNC to do something like that in these remaining 3 weeks. Because they fundamentally do not trust the delegates. So that's until the opinions come out. That's really all I have to say on that, unless there are other questions. And again, I'm probably going to be spending most of my time on the affirmative opinions because that's going to be a lot of the, I'm sure there's going to be some great quotes to use on the floor there. Just like Mary Rohr had the best quote ever in her opinion on my case, which I will paraphrase here. If the so-called leaders of this party have such tender feelings that they can't handle the criticism of their secretary, who doesn't back up her words with actual violence, they are in no position to say that they are ready to take on the state, which backs up its words with violence. And perhaps they need to find somewhere else to serve the party. Mary Rohr was absolutely right. And I think whatever she says here is going to be just as powerful. Though I bet Alicia's writing for the voice of that side. And what she wrote in the Delaware case was perfect. I couldn't have written it better. Though Alicia, I think, is a better writer than me in general anyway. But it was perfect, in my opinion. So I think what Alicia writes here will probably be very good as well. Though, as I've said multiple times, I think what she wrote in my case was shit. But I think it's because, honestly, I've said this multiple times, she was trying to get even with me for beating her by 20%. You can read it throughout there. It was a revenge piece. She let her judgment get put aside, and she misrepresented me by saying that I admitted to one of the charges, which I absolutely, categorically, fundamentally did not. But other than that, because that was personal, Alicia's been on point. Alicia's been on point. And I expect her to be on point here. She's brilliant. She's one of the smartest people I know. So is Chuck, by the way. So bad Chuck for not being on the right side of this opinion. Because Chuck and Alicia are probably two of the smartest people I know. Alicia's scary smart. Like, I'd be very curious to know what her IQ is. Because I bet you it's like, whoop, out there. Anyway, that's all I have to say on this. It's disappointing, but for me, just like with my case, it only fires me up more. I think a win might have made me complacent. So now I'm bringing it And I hope every one of those Massachusetts 47 are bringing it. And everyone who thinks that secret purges without notice, which was emboldened by the JC decision, by the way. Again, consequences. Decisions have consequences. And all the people who voted that my removal was just ducky, just saying, Massachusetts wouldn't have happened but for that JC decision. That emboldened people to say words are violence, even though I know you guys didn't say that in your opinion. The LNC did, and you backed the LNC, and the purges started just like I predicted. Not saying you should have changed your ethics or your principles just for consequences. All I'm saying is own the consequences. Own it. Because what happened in Massachusetts is a direct waterfall from what the JC allowed to happen to me. Own it. On a happier note, well, depending upon your point of view, I guess, the platform committee report is out. If anyone has any questions on any of the proposals, please feel free to email me. I will not be discussing the platform committee report in detail on my channel. I don't want to hear the reeing that I'm monetizing a position, because I am not. There will be town halls. If enough members write, we will schedule, perhaps we're going to be doing a town hall the same day as bylaws. I don't know. It will not be on this channel. I will not discuss the platform committee report on this channel. It will be on a separate Zoom call or something entirely different. I hope you like the report. I support every proposal on the report. I will, however, be talking about the bylaws report once I've had a chance to really look at it on this channel, because I have no such ethical obligations there. I'm not on the bylaws committee. I'm just a regular member now, and I can say what I want. Sorry, Senator. Not sorry. Voting to give your corporation or a corporation you founded $85,000 without ever disclosing that to the LNC. But no conflict there. Oh my God, this LNC is so bad. Get over it, Karen Ann. Just get over it. Just be glad you are far away from the blast radius, because they only got worse since they got rid of me. Like, I thought they were supposed to get all this work done. I think we see who was on the right side of that. They've got nothing done. They've done nothing but nearly bankrupt this party. You guys realize how close we are to being bankrupt right now? It's just the building. If we didn't have that building, this party would be bankrupt right now. You do realize that, right? Just saying how dire the situation is. There needs to be a change, a big change. And I know some people on the other side will go, oh, it's bankrupt because all the good people are leaving because they hate the Mises Caucus people. Well, you want to know what? The exact opposite can be argued. And it's the exact opposite, I think, is the truth. The people who agree, they're not even necessarily Mises Caucus members, people who agree that the woke, milquetoast, cowardly direction of this party has not inspired them to give money. And I know for a fact multiple people stopped giving after what happened with me and said they will not give again unless I'm reelected. Now, of course, that's not an argument to reelect me. People will always come and go. People will always give and stop giving. You can't give into those sorts of things over a person, be it me, be it anyone. No one is that important. But you can do it over the fundamental issues of this party. The fact that the LNC held that mere words are violence. The fact that this party was the pedants in the audience will go, well, they said a few tweets, was for the most part 99% silent over the civil rights violations that happened during the COVID regime. That is why the party is nearly bankrupt. And Chuck points out that the party's been in way worse times in the last 20 years. We will survive. I think that's an awful cavalier way to look at it. Just because we've been in this position before, and to say we will bounce back is taking people for granted. And people do not like being taken for granted. The way worse shape we've been in before has been for different reasons. And you know that. Sometimes it's been a little bit the ideological direction. But some of it has also been the disastrous decision upon flip-flopping on membership dues. The, in my opinion, premature pulling out of the Archimedes project. The events of 9/11. There were a lot of other factors. To try to say what's happening now is the same as those, well, or even analogously the same, and because we survived then, we'll survive now. There's no guarantee of that. None at all. We're entering into a time of economic crisis where people are going to have to make hard decisions on how they're spending their money. And that might have been true also in some of those other times, and it might not have been. But just because we've survived before, I think, no offense, Chuck, I think it's really arrogant to assume that it'll happen again. I don't take anything for granted. This and the LNCs that this happened to before, except for the drop after 9/11, because that is something that is outside the party's control. But the LNCs this has happened to before, they sucked too. What has happened to this party right now, the financial shape it's in, whether or not we bounce back from it, and I fervently hope we do, obviously. I've given every single extra dollar and moment of my time to this party. But the reason we are in the situation we are in now, the blame lies squarely at the feet of this LNC. Not every single individual member, obviously, but as a body, as a majority. Because I think there are people on the LNC that are great. So I'm obviously not talking about individuals. There's about 6, not including alternates, that I think are fantastic. But 6 isn't a majority. The majority of this LNC has run the party into the ground. And when you have an LNC member on the list so far without rebuke saying that members exercising their appeal rights are to blame, that's the most, in my personal time with the party, which of course isn't that long, 2014, 8 years. That's the most disgusting thing I have ever read on the LNC list. Now, people who have been around longer probably have other contenders for disgusting things. But in my time, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever read. And the fact that that hasn't been called out yet just shows this was never about decorum. This was about a witch hunt against me. Can you imagine if I ever said anything like that? Off with her head. But because this is one of the cool kids, it's okay for this LNC member to actually blame members who are exercising their rights under the bylaws rather than looking at themselves. honestly, there should have been a call for that LNC member to resign immediately after that. That was an outrageous comment to say on the LNC list. If that LNC member said it on their own personal social media, I would still think it was gross, but I'm consistent. Say what you want on your own personal social media, unless you're advocating violence, which was the issue, whether people like it or not, in the Arvin Boer thing. And they keep trying to make my case and Arvin similar. No, they're not. They are not at all similar. Whether or not people agree with people on either side, the issue was consent, joking about shooting up school boards, okay? Right after a school board shooting and being vocally opposed to public schools. It was about that, okay? It wasn't just about saying provocative things on social media, because Arvin's always done that. I've always done that. It was about, was the line crossed into advocating violating consent or advocating violence? And reasonable people can disagree. I voted the will of my region. I was Region 1 representative at the time. I don't know how I would vote today, to be honest with you. Being through everything I've been through, I probably, and if I wasn't a regional representative, I probably would have voted no today. I'm more than willing to say when I've been wrong, or I would have abstained, more likely. But I was a regional rep. Unlike the current regional rep, I followed the will of my region. Thank you, Hector. Hector says, your removal was also based on a fraudulent deciding vote. Yep, it was. It might not have been technically fraudulent, but when you an alternate and you lie to your regional, to your rep, and you say you're not going to be there, and then the other side, who knows they don't have the votes, sneaks you in without telling that person, that is fraud. I do not care whether it's technically against any rules. We shouldn't need rules to tell us that some things are wrong. And the example I like to give, and again, analogy, people, learn what an analogy is. A business owner is not, in Libertopia, is not breaking any rules to put up a sign that says no X type of people allowed. They've broken no rule, but they're still disgusting people. And that regional alternate may not have broken any rule, and I think that's questionable. But I'll grant, for the sake of argument, it doesn't mean that what he did wasn't fraud and it wasn't disgusting. It was. The LNC knows damn well they did not have the votes to remove me. But as I've said multiple times, if they didn't remove me, I wouldn't have been able to help Delaware. I wouldn't have been able to help Massachusetts. I wouldn't have been able to continue to help New Hampshire. And being able to do that was worth it. And knowing what I know now, I'd do it all over again. I would tone down some things probably, because nobody is perfect. I don't think any of us could say everything we've ever said we wouldn't change if we could do again. Anyone who says that is a liar. But fundamentally, I would not do anything differently. Calling out the LNC for its virtual silence on COVID, I actually think I didn't do it strongly enough. And that was the unsaid other part of my removal, and everyone knows it. And in the packet of evidence, and I'm sorry, shame you on the JC on this, I was removed for being friendly to the Mises Caucus. Because in the packet of quote unquote evidence, they said, she's interfering with state affiliates. And the evidence was me saying, hey, I'm going to such and such convention. Are there any Mises people there? That was in the evidence against me. Fucking prayers to God were in the evidence against me. Talk about civil liberties violation. LNC members aren't allowed to pray to God now? It was so gross. I think in the 3 weeks leading up to Reno, we may just go through that folder of evidence and laugh at it. Really. That's how shallow it was. And what some people, God, I'm going off on a rant right now. Apparently, I still have a lot of feels. And what some people don't know is in the folder of evidence against me was a video I did recreating the RCV vote that elected Whitney to show that the vote was not rigged. Whether you like the results or not, RCV functioned exactly as it should. It was just an educational video. Laura Epke wrote me after that video, telling me what an excellent video it was and thanking me for it. Yet she put that in the folder of evidence against me because they didn't watch. It was just a dragnet. It was so gross. And the fact that this was upheld by the JC is an utter embarrassment to this party. And I don't want that to happen to anyone ever again. And I won't do, though I don't blame her, what Angela Keaton did, who after she won her point, she left the party. There have been people who wrote me who said, if you get reelected, are you going to then say, thank you for the vindication and resign? No, I am not. I would never do that. So if anyone has that concern, nope, I will do my job. One of my campaign slogans is make Karen Ann boring again, besides make Karen Ann secretary again. I want this LNC to be so scrupulous and have so much integrity that I have nothing to say except for talking about history, which is what I want to do. So please, please make me boring again. I do think leading up to Reno, I should do a recap of what happened, what really happened in New Hampshire. The retaliation, then Delaware and Massachusetts. I probably should. I might not, because I really just want to do history. Sweet baby Jesus. That's really all I want to do. And covering other minor parties. I'm really into that. I like doing the news on the People's Party and stuff like that, ballot access. I don't like this stuff. But while we're on it, there's something that people don't remember is before New Hampshire happened, this LNC was actually quite peaceful. We didn't know what Bishop Henchman was planning behind the scenes. And what's funny, and Hector knows this, right before New Hampshire went down, Stephen Nikela, addressing the Florida convention, said, my God, this LNC term, it's been so peaceful. 5 minutes later, we got the text that said, what the hell is this post in New Hampshire? Like, literally, things were fine until then. Like, except for the COVID stuff. But I'm talking about the attitudes of LNC members towards each other. Like, we disagreed, but it was pretty peaceful. I mean, I did tell them in December that if they weren't willing to speak out against COVID, they should disband the party. And I stand by that statement. If we can't speak out against civil liberties violations, we have no reason to exist, just like the Civil Liberties Union has no reason to exist nowadays because it doesn't defend free speech or gun rights. Fuck them. I don't even know where I was going on this. Oh, so what people don't remember is prior to New Hampshire blowing up, when there were votes on the LNC, that I disagreed with other LNC members on, I invited them to my show immediately after the meeting when it was an online meeting, usually, but sometimes it was an in-person meeting. And we would have a very friendly discussion about our disagreement. Francis Went was on my show. Eric's been on multiple times. I would love to see things like that happening again. It doesn't have to be my channel. It could be LPTV. I think that would be a great thing for LPTV to have like an after LNC discussion amongst LNC members where it gives them more opportunity to explain their votes that may not be allowed under Roberts, either time runs out or whatever. I think that would foster a better relationship, not just between LNC members, but between the LNC and the party. Because right now, the LNC views the majority of the membership as the enemy. And the majority of the membership views the LNC as the enemy. And that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable. That will, if it's allowed to continue, destroy the party. We're seeing that right now with the money situation. I don't think we could hand wave that away. And I think we need to take a really hard look as to why that happened. One reason it happened, though, is also some bad budgeting practices that I think Todd Hagopian has brought up that are very worthy of discussion. That's another matter. That's more a bookkeeping thing. I mean, it's political, but it's not political in the same way that I'm saying. But after Reno, no matter who is elected, there needs to be a really hard internal look at the LNC as to what went wrong. And they can't say it was the pink-haired secretary, because everything went even worse after that, because members then felt like they had no voice. And whether or not certain LNC members didn't like me, the membership felt like I was their voice. And when their voice was removed, there's going to be a rebellion. This LNC is just politically, again, not all of them, as a body, as a majority, politically foolish. They don't understand the Streisand effect. They don't understand you don't make martyrs of people. And they don't understand that you don't remove a populist figure. I know that word populism gets a bad rap today because of Trump. He misused it to mean nationalism. That is not what populism means. Populism is when the little guy feels like they have just as much of a chance as more privileged people, and that they have an equal voice, and that there is someone in a position of privilege willing to stand up for them. And whether this LNC wants to realize it or not, that is what I was to the members. And that is why things got worse after they removed me, because those members felt like their voice was taken away. I think people who don't even necessarily care for me and wouldn't vote for me, if they put their emotions aside, I think they'll concede the wisdom of my words, at least in part. And I am rerunning on the same platform I ran on that got me elected twice before. And it is to stick up for members, to be the voice of members. And when I was Region 1, Chuck, you may remember this. I hope you're still here. Do you remember on IPR what you said about me? Not in a critical way. Well, maybe it was critical, but I didn't take it personally. When I got $5,000 out of the LNC to support the campaign of Joe Bookman in Utah, And you went on IPR and said, Karen Ann is just there bringing home the pork for Region 1. I don't know if you remember that comment. And I laughed because I was zealously representing Region 1, the members of Region 1. Do you remember that, Chuck? I never forgot it. I laughed so hard. Because I'm not going to call it pork barreling, but I was the only LNC member that got money for candidates in their region. You remember, I got money for the gentleman in Montana. Crap, I can't remember his name. But you'll remember, and Dr. Joe Bookman. And what was my argument? A, I'm here to represent Region 1. And B, and I do not feel bad for it for a second, and let me justify to everyone else here why. Region 1, at the time I represented it, it's a slightly different region now, had ballot access, except for Washington, which had to get 1,000 signatures, which is easy peasy. So my argument was, all of this money that members from Region 1 are sending is being spent on ballot access that doesn't directly benefit Region 1. It does indirectly. I disagreed with my predecessor on that, Normalson, who always voted against ballot access for that same reason. I disagreed with him. While it might not directly benefit Region 1, full ballot access benefits everybody, because when you're talking to the man on the street, they want to know that your presidential candidate is on all the ballots. So it did benefit Region 1, but not directly. So I think my argument that, hey, show some love here, was not unreasonable. And the same thing's happening now with the Frontier Project. It's just not quite as open as I was. The Frontier Project funnels money to Region 1 candidates mostly because the ballot access is good here, and here's where the winnable races are. That's just a political reality. But I'm glad you remembered that comment, Chuck. That was funny. I remember that. I remember that like it was yesterday. So there is a reason why the state chairs who were the chairs of Region 1 when I ran for secretary, and then they remained chairs for a few years after, wouldn't deal with the newly elected Region 1 people. They called me still. Why? Because I was immensely popular in Region 1, because they knew I had their backs like a tiger. And I felt bad, actually, for Richard. He was elected after me because they didn't mean it personally against him. They were just used to me. So they didn't call Richard. They called me. And I would write Richard and go, dude, I'm not encouraging this. But if a state chair calls me, I'm not going to refuse it. But I do gently say to them, I'm not your representative anymore. You should be calling your current representative. But to this day, even after my removal, I'm not going to say what state chair it was. I still had a state chair calling me, asking me what to do on things and how their concerns could be best addressed. It was one of the last remaining state chairs that was still a state chair from my tenure. So I was a populist Region 1 rep, and I was a populist secretary. And it is just foolish. What the LNC did was foolish. They destroyed themselves on September 5th. And it could have been so much different. And we're seeing the results right now. The bankruptcy and whatever. And they may think they won this JC decision, because technically, well, not even technically, they did. You can win a battle, but you're going to lose the war. You've already lost the war. You lost the war in September. But this is just even more. This is just even more. This party is not going to put up with purgers. And if I were any of those people on the purging side, the delegates aren't going to seat you. I could be wrong. Yeah, insolvency, I guess, is a better word, Hector. I'm not a financial guru, so I do appreciate the correction. You are correct. Let me just put it in layman's terms. If it weren't for the building, we ain't got no money. Just to put it in everyday man's terms, no matter what the technical term is, though I think you're correct, Hector. We ain't got no liquid assets. Let's put it that way. But to the purgers, yeah, we be broke. But to the purgers, and like I said in my last brief to the JC, which was background facts. Again, I only gave those facts. The JC knows why. It's because certain misrepresentations were made in an email, and it was requested that I put these things into an amicus, but really wasn't on point to this decision. But the legitimacy of the alleged current bad board of Massachusetts rests entirely on the special member convention being illegitimate. If the special member convention was legitimate, their terms ended, and they can call all the annual conventions they want. It'd be like me calling an annual convention of Massachusetts. It would mean nothing. So if that special convention in February was legitimate, the delegates they elected are illegitimate. Any bylaws changes they made are illegitimate, and their board is illegitimate. But let's pretend that the special convention was illegitimate and that board remained in power. The legitimacy of their delegates, their board, and their bylaws changes also rests entirely on the legitimacy of the removals. Because if those members were illegitimately removed, 47 of them, it means they were denied their voting rights, which is a continuing breach of their governing documents, and all actions taken are null and void. Now, if I were part of that purging faction, I don't think I would spend $3,000 to $4,000 going to a convention where I think there's a 99.9% chance you ain't going to be seated. Maybe a couple of you might find spaces in other state delegations, but this isn't the same party it was when Oregon had 2 delegations, because back then states didn't fill their delegations. There was always open seats. Chuck will remember this. Prior to 2016, it used to be said, listen, if you weren't elected at your convention because you couldn't go, you couldn't make it, something happened, just show up at convention. Someone will seat you. Before 2016, it was always that way. Since 2016, states have filled their delegation. It's not that way anymore. And while some of those purgers, some of the 17 delegates allegedly elected by the purgers, some of them might find seats in other states. Most of them won't. And some of the states they would have found seats in before no longer allow out-of-state delegates, like California. So not only has the party grown to where states fill their delegations, the number of states that would even consider seating an out-of-stater has shrank. So good on you if you've got $4,000 to waste. You ain't getting seated. Again, I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball. But if I were a betting man or woman and I had disposable income, Chuck likes betting, but I don't have any money to bet, and it wouldn't be ethical for you or I to bet. But I think Chuck in his own mind's probably thinking the same thing. If there were some like legal betting outfit over here that was taking bets on which delegation in Massachusetts was going to be seated, the good money is on the purged members, not the purgers. I honestly think the purgers are going to be lucky if they aren't booed out of the hall. I won't be doing it. Me too, Chuck. I only make bets. I mean, you can never know anything, but that I'm fairly certain I would win. And this is a bet, hypothetically, because I have no money and there's no like legitimate way to like place these bets. This is a bet I would make because those people ain't getting seated. I think they know it too. They might be a little emboldened by this tie, unfortunately. Let us remember that all this decision would have done is kicked it back to the LNC, and we all know that the LNC wasn't going to recognize the correct people anyway. I mean, we know that. That's another bet I would have taken. They would have sided with the purgers. I can't know that for sure, but I'm pretty certain of that. So they would have been emboldened by that anyway, and then there would have just been, yeah, it was a tie, Hector, and a tie is a loss. Chuck says, what's unclear to me is how many of the full delegations will have a lot of no-shows. Reno is more expensive than a lot of people realized. True. But people have also put up more alternates. So I don't think there's going to be any issue with that, Chuck. None. My opinion. And because of the contentiousness, I think people will sleep on the street to be there. There are people who are cramming into cars and splitting gas. I know the people, and that's not you, and I'm not saying this is you. I want to make clear, I'm talking about hypothetical other people that I'm not going to name. I know some of the Mises haters are hoping, and there's a disinformation campaign going on right now, by the way, an active disinformation campaign that is saying a lot of the Mises people are dropping out. Let me just tell you right now, categorically. I mean, I'm not in leadership, so, my knowledge isn't, like the Ginger Jesus or anything like that. But, I'm a member that goes to meetings and things like that when I'm invited. I can tell you that to my knowledge, that ain't true. This is an active disinformation campaign that's going on. So any of you have been hearing that and thinking, oh, maybe it's not going to be so bad if you're one of the people who think having a lot of Mises people would be bad. I don't. I think that's what's going to save the party. I've been very clear about that. If you've been believing that, sorry, you've been fed a lie. It's disinformation. Some have dropped out, just like some of theirs have dropped out. Not any more than average. There's going to be average dropouts, as with any convention. But if I'm going to quote the last piece of disinformation I saw was, the Mises people are quote unquote dropping like flies, end quote. That is a lie. Shame on you, those who are repeating it. Greg Koch, why do I get a feeling we'll be wasting the whole first day on credentials report again? Because we probably will be because of this JC decision, to be honest with you. I hope not. I hope not. And I'm a praying person. If any of you are praying people, not that I think God is terribly concerned with the Libertarian Party, but on the off chance that God's a little bored and might want to throw us a favor, I think that could happen, Greg. I think that could happen. I hope not, though. My hope is we get credentials over in an hour. Hope springs eternal. Before I go, while Bren, there isn't a committee with an even number of members. A member recused himself due to conflict of interest, and I applaud that member for doing that. He didn't have to. It wasn't required under Roberts. That actually, I disagree with Berman on a lot, but that hats off. That was a principled, very ethical, principled decision on Berman's part. He didn't have to do that. I mean, I think, well, Chuck and I and others will remember when, we're not going to mention any names, a former chair of a JC decided it was in order to rescind a JC decision from 9 years prior when that JC chair was a defendant in a lawsuit that involved monetary damages concerning that same issue and didn't recuse himself. So hats off to Berman. And what I just mentioned, Chuck, probably no one else in this room knows what I'm talking about but you. I've all of a sudden become a little bit of an old timer, haven't I? I feel old now. I still think of myself as like brand new, but that's not true. Taranticia, I think post Reno, this party is going to explode in a good way. I do. Yeah, boots off to Vermin. So, yeah, Taranticia. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I think if Reno goes the way I think it's going to go, the LP is going to take this country by storm. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. It's ready for a libertarian party that isn't ashamed to be libertarian. It doesn't apologize for libertarian positions. It basically ignores the Democrats and Republicans and stops comparing itself to them. It also rejects the left-right paradigm because the left-right paradigm is bullshit and reframes the whole debate to it's authoritarian versus libertarian. I think we need to stop mentioning the R's and D's. Chuck, will I be doing a stream on that leak? Oh, a little bit. My radio show tomorrow is going to be a little bit on it. I think you're going to respect what I have to say. I'm not going to be getting into it in depth because abortion, as it always is at every convention, it's probably going to be the subject, as it is every convention, of a token vote or a motion from the floor. I promised the platform committee that I would stay out of that debate. I've also vowed I will not be casting any tokens. I will be throwing my tokens away. I have multiple reasons for that, but part of it is when I'm committee chair, I guard my impartiality like it's gold. Otherwise, you lose the trust of your committee. So I've promised the committee that I'm not engaging in these types of commentary or debates prior to Reno that reasonably might come up at Reno and in which the committee did not make a recommendation. The platform committee report didn't touch the abortion plank. So I'm staying out of the whole abortion issue until after Reno. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but without getting into abortion itself, but getting into some lies that I have seen, not in the LP, but specifically from moveon.org, who I get emails from. Their emails are as bad as the Trump fundraiser emails, just opposite sides of the same coin. So a little tiny bit. But I will say, I think the fact of the leak is atrocious. Like, that can't happen. The opinion was going to come out. You have everybody up in an uproar, and it was likely a first draft. We don't know what the opinion's going to look like. We really don't. I mean, I think we could be fairly certain that they are going to overturn it. But as to what the reasoning is going to be or anything like that, that leak just inflamed everybody. And I don't have much respect for the government, but I do think it was ethically wrong to leak that, whoever did it. I know a lot of people might disagree with me on that, but there was no corruption. Like, I'm a firm believer in leaks and in disclosing secrets when there's corruption. But drafts being circulated amongst the Supreme Court before they've made their decision, that isn't corruption. That'd be like somebody distributing in the LP leaks of the Judicial Committee on the LP's, initial drafts of opinions. That's just y'all's crafting and finalizing your opinion. Like, no, that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I think that's a breach of trust in a big, big way. And I don't know who it was supposed to benefit, to be honest with you, the last of the libertarians. No idea. I think an argument can be made either way. I don't know. But after Reno, I'll be discussing my personal opinion on, I'm sure the decision will be out by then on the decision, but I will not be discussing it prior to Reno to honor my promise to the platform committee. And I hope everyone can respect that, because I've been asked a lot to discuss it, and I'm just not, for that reason. I keep my word. Okay. Gamer James, just so you know, as I'm sure you do by the comment, I am autistic. I don't mean that like self-diagnosed. I mean like officially diagnosed. I'm on a social media break. I know these streams, the notifications of them are getting posted on social media. That's not me doing it. It's my software. It does it automatically. So I'm not going to go read that Twitter thread, because my autistic OCD will then kick into gear. And next thing you know, I'll lose my self-control and we'll be back on Twitter. And I am really trying to be on a social media fast for 1 month for several reasons. A, I think it's good for you. And B, LP stuff gets way too ugly prior to convention, and I don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. So I haven't been on social media. I broke it a little tiny bit, but I'm trying not to. Each year I try now to take a month off. Sometimes It's involuntary because I've been banned. But I've never been banned from Twitter. I get banned from Facebook all the time. But this is self-imposed. So maybe email me that Gamer Jam. My email's pinkflameofliberty@gmail.com because I probably would like to read it in the future. I just don't trust my self-control to read it now. All right. Before we close, I'm going to go back to just a tiny bit of grifting. If you believe in my cause and you would like a voice of the members again on the LNC, not saying that any of the people also running won't be a voice of the members. I don't know who else will be elected, so I can only speak for myself. There's my campaign. And most people, well, let's just put it this way. I don't even know how to word this. That's the extra you get. But the main thing you get, and I say this without apology, I'm a fucking good secretary. So if you want a good secretary and the extras that you know I will stand up for people, then please consider contributing to my campaign. And I do ask for your vote. But also, right here, if you also cannot stand that hateful, disgusting design put forward by the Convention Oversight Committee, which I believe was a lie to the members who voted for that theme because they were not voting for Phantom of the Opera, an independent designer made a good theme for Liberty Unmasked. That independent designer gave me permission to use the design as I wished with no restrictions. I, however, like to reward independent designers. So the Liberty Unmasked Convention t-shirts are available on my store. If you buy one, any profits I split 50-50 with the designer. He's been pleasantly surprised. We've sold quite a bit. I bet you I've sold more t-shirts than the National Party has because no one wants that hateful design. They're already discounting their shirts. Like the second email already discounted it because that design is a lie to the members who voted for it. No offense to the designer. I think that would have been a great design for theater. It's not a bad drawing, or put it, it's not like the guy didn't have skills. He obviously has skills. It's just a mismatch to what this convention theme was supposed to be about. It's not Phantom of the Opera. I just don't know how the convention committee was so frickin' tone deaf and out of touch with the membership. But I'd be very curious how many t-shirts the National Party has sold. I think I've sold more. But all proceeds get split with the independent designer. The other half goes to me and is helping my campaign. I want to see you wear these at the convention. Also, email me at either Pink Flame of Liberty or KarenAnnHarlos@gmail.com. Let me know if you don't want that hateful design on your name badge. I am, as a gift to the party, no charge, printing alternative name badges that have the same logo made by that independent designer. If you would like one of those name badges, email me and I will bring one for you. It will also have a plastic holder because I don't know what size the convention committee is using. So I can't guarantee that the badges I'm printing will fit in the holder that the convention is going to provide you. So I'll also give you a plastic holder for it. But these name badges can be used with any lanyard. So you can still use the lanyard that's given to you by the convention committee if you wish. These name badges have nothing about my campaign on them. Anyone can request them. Haters can request them. Has nothing to do with my campaign. It's just my gift. However, if you want to do the name badge and support my campaign, I will have pink lanyards at my table that will have a campaign slogan on them. But you don't have to use that lanyard. You could use the lanyard provided by the convention committee. So this has nothing to do with my campaign. Also, at my table, I'm pressing them out now, will be Liberty Unmasked buttons for free with the good logo. Because I want you guys to go home with souvenirs from this convention that don't have that hateful logo on them. And at my store, there's not only t-shirts, there's tote bags, because you're going to get a lot of literature. And I'm sure the plastic tote bags that they're going to be giving you at credentialing is going to have that hateful logo on it. So you can pick up a tote bag as well. Actually, I think I'm going to look into getting I hate plastic though. I saw this documentary on a turtle that had a straw stuck up its nose. And ever since then, and then somebody laughed at me and said, haha, joke's on you. The turtle was just a big Coke user. But ever since then, I've been so conscious of plastic consumption because the image of that turtle, like, it just wrecked me. You know, sometimes you see some like Old Yeller, like a lot of us are still traumatized from seeing Old Yeller when we were in grade school. I am. I'm still traumatized by Old Yeller. But that turtle freaking traumatized me to the point I am so conscious of plastic use right now because I don't want to hurt sea life. And sea life, oh my God, we are killing the planet with plastic. And we can come up with voluntary solutions. We don't need the state. Here I am voluntarily going, oh my God, how can I limit my use of plastic because of the turtle? That damn turtle, man, it haunts my dreams. So yeah, maybe I'll look into getting some paper bags printed that for free for you guys. I'll pay for it if I can scrounge up the money. Or if any of you guys want to help, if you think this is a worthy thing to just give out to convention goers, it has the good logo on it. All right, everyone. Didn't want to put that back up. I think that's it. I think that is it. Oh, let me do one last grift. Since I'm such a grifter, since that's what I got removed for, I might as well work that poll harder. Once Reno's over, you know, raising for campaigns and all that is over. And in fact, I'm almost done raising my campaign. Oh, I did have news for you guys before we do this. I told you guys I would have a final figure of what I still need to raise. I did find out from the printer today. I will have my postcards by next week, which is enough time to mail them, assuming the post office sucks not as bad as they possibly could. Most people will be able to get their mailers. So I have raised now exactly enough. I paid for the postcards. I have exactly enough left in my campaign war chest to pay for postage. There are some additional flyers and signage that I would like to have. They're not a necessity. So I told you guys that in order to complete my wish list for my campaign, and I want to print out some more campaign buttons, that if I wanted to complete my wish list, which I don't have to, if I had to stop right now, I'm fine. But I told you guys I'd give you a drop dead number. I'm going to aim a little high because I don't know how many more buttons I need to make. But in order to fulfill my entire wish list, I need to raise an additional $300, and that's it. No more asks from me. But even if I don't, I'm good right now. Like, I've done nearly everything. But if I wanted to, I think you get the point. Now, if anyone wants to contribute separately, I can look into getting some paper bags printed up that have nothing to do with my campaign with a good logo on it. Get in touch with me, and we'll give those out for free. I'd love to do that as well, but that has to be separate from donor money because donor money, you know, they trust me to use it for my campaign. All right, everyone. So now let me put the patron thing back up. Post Reno, I will still have my show because I will be elected if I'm blessed to be. Whether I'm elected or not, I will still have this show and I will still be asking for support on Patreon. And the LNC would have a pretty hard time trying to remove me again if I were elected, knowing damn well that YouTube is right now, YouTube is my job. I don't have any other job. And no lie, I make a decent part-time living at this. I would love to make a full-time living at it. And in fact, I might be going on radio stations in bigger markets. It's something I'm going to work on after Reno. So I may end up being like a commentator full-time. That's my dream. But at least part-time. And people tell me every single day that they've learned more about the Libertarian Party, not bad gossipy stuff, but like how bylaws work, how rules work, just the inner workings from me in 6 months. Then they learned 10 years being in the party. And then, of course, there's the history and things like that. So post Reno, I would really appreciate it if you would become a patron. Do I have the book here? There is some patron only content. We are going through right now the problem of political authority. Wowzer. I've only done the intro and I'm already like, I want to have this book's baby. It is excellent. I'm almost done with chapter. He numbers these weird. It's chapter 1, but he goes like 1.1, 1.2, whatever. I'm almost done with chapter 1. I might be recording that tonight. So that is only for patrons. That gets put up on Patreon. Also, if you're a patron, you get access to my private Discord server. It's not terribly active, I'm not going to lie, but it could be as active as you guys want it to be. But my private Discord server is now where I share more personal things that I used to post on Facebook that got weaponized against me, shamefully enough. Like, I've never hid the fact that I have struggled with depression throughout my entire life. And so I think do a lot of you, or anxiety, or other, traditional mental health issues. And there's such shame in this world in talking about that. And in the evidence against me in my removal, the LNC put me just being open to people about my struggles with depression. How dare they? I can't even imagine how many people who saw that were then shamed into silence, saying, oh my God, they removed her over talking about her depression. So I don't talk so much about that on Facebook anymore, not because I'm ashamed, but because I don't want other people to see me getting backlash for being open, and then they lose their courage to be open. I think these kinds of issues, the stigma needs to be removed from them. There still is a huge, huge stigma, unfortunately, and particularly in the religious world, which is what I come from. Because when I was a fundamentalist, I was told just to pray harder, that you're suffering from depression because you lack faith. And unfortunately, that is still a reality for a lot of Christians. And I'm sorry if your church is telling you that. Your church is abusing you, and you should find another church. At times that might be true. Maybe you are having a spiritual crisis. But if this is something you've been going through your entire life, that's probably not it. You probably have a medical issue. And there's no shame in seeking medical intervention. And I've always been a voice for this. I was a voice for this in the church, and I remain a voice for this. And I think it's absolutely disgusting that the LNC shamed me for this. The party of principle. So if you would like to have those kinds of discussions, those now take place on my Discord server. It's a safe place that if you're struggling, with, I have been diagnosed with, as most of you know, autism, and comorbid with autism is OCD. And I've had a lifelong struggle with depression, which crap, ever since right around the time of my removal, when, I was in a really dark place. As most people know, I got help and I've been great since then. And love to tell you what's worked for me. It might not work for you, but there should be no shame about that. So my Discord server is a safe place to talk about struggles with depression or the like. Or if you think, or if you're autistic, or you think you might be autistic, or your child is autistic, like, no mockery here. No mockery here. And I also don't think it's something to be ashamed of. And in fact, I got diagnosed too late to be officially Asperger's, but what I have is Asperger's. And let me tell you, if they could cure it tomorrow, I would refuse. Asperger's is my superpower. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's how I get so much crap done, because it gives me a focus. All right, everyone. So that's it. Sorry, Massachusetts. This wasn't the right decision. I will never give up on you. Over and out.